All right, everybody, welcome to the cast. We're filming on Tuesdays, releasing on Fridays, so this is a week-old news
Great.
at this point. But it's important to talk about. YouTube is disabling dislikes on videos. Allegedly, and I watched the PR video that they released, where they trotted out some poor guy who has to just defend this line, which is total BS, just professionally, and I don't blame him, has to lie, that this is to protect, essentially, the feelings of small creators.
Yeah.
Now, there's a really easy way to do that, which is to disable likes on videos with fewer than 10,000 views or something. Like, problem solved. Smaller creators.
You can only dislike a video after it gets past 10,000 views. We did it, YouTube. You're welcome.
Solved your problem. Small creators are protected.
You're welcome.
It's such a bummer. It really is, because
it's such a worse product.
And I think maybe it's Web 2 or whatever, but we've talked about this with Uber. All of these companies and products, which I still use and still find utility and value in, used to be awesome. Mm-hmm. Like Uber was, when they came out from a customer's perspective, they're like, we will never ask for tip because like you should just pay it up front.
Price is included.
It's a minute away maximum.
Always going to be cheaper than a cab.
Always going to be cheaper than a cab. And we've arrived at a place where Uber doesn't show up, is more expensive than a cab. Mm-hmm. Tip is totally necessary in order for these drivers to make a living, they reveal later down the line after they've paid to acquire you as a customer. It's essentially, from a customer's perspective, obviously not from the driver, it feels like an app to order a taxi.
Yes, but at least half of taxi drivers have gone out of business because of Uber's competitive practices. So now there are no taxis for you to take.
Yeah.
So you have to take an Uber.
So now we're at YouTube, broadcast yourself. You know, it's about the little guy. And this is, in my opinion, I'll say it, like indefensibly to protect advertisers. Dude, and
just hail big corporate, man.
Yeah.
Get on board. Hail big corporate.
The dislikes, and I'm saying things that I've seen said before, but it was such a useful feature to know if you were being clickbaited by a video.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's videos that have lots of views that you'll click, and I'm thinking like UFC fights, like full fight. It's like, no, it's not. And I knew like right away that it wasn't the full fight. But if you have the right thumbnail and the right title, you'll still get tons of views, and you can string people along by having the like tail of the tape at the beginning, which I don't know what fight this is from exactly. I can't. Yeah. So they'll get their whatever 35 seconds of
but now Gillette doesn't have a 90% downvoted advertisement video, you know? And that's what really matters. Also, YouTube Rewind, all right? Someone in YouTube was just tired of getting dumped on every year. After all his hard work turned out to be shitty.
Yes.
Now he doesn't have to deal with it.
And yeah, it's a real shame. And
that's why we need Web 3, dude.
I'm getting more and more on board with
decentralize.
It's a bummer because I think there's this natural, when you're not the incumbent, when you're the newcomer, you have to do things better for the audience in order to break in. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of these companies did, was they made it really customer friendly. And I was like, I love these corporations. They're amazing, you know? And increasingly as they become the incumbents, they become worse and worse as they try to protect and build moats around their thing and cater more to advertisers and stop paying to acquire users and start extracting value from their users. So it's a bummer, but one of the lines in the video, and again, I don't blame the guy who had to make it, who had to get there, is like, creators can be bullied or harassed for their decision to turn off likes, so we've chosen to do it for all videos. Like, there was already the opportunity to turn off likes and dislikes if you didn't like it.
Well, you can also turn off comments. So let's just say I'm a creator. I'm like, man, I really don't like that I'm getting downvoted so much. I'm going to turn off my downvote option. And then I get a bunch of comments spamming me for doing that. I can also turn those off. And I can produce videos that no one can like, no one can dislike, and no one can comment on. That's a fully available feature.
It's obviously false justification. Yeah. And like the ideas that we have, which is literally, okay, you want to protect small creators, just put a number, you know, under 10,000 views, under 50,000 views. You can't, there's no things, upvotes or downvotes, and that's across the board. There's really easy ways to just solve the problem that they profess to have, which isn't, we've taken this away for everybody, you're not allowed to dislike videos that you don't like anymore, while creating a whole new problems. But even if we do take them at their word, the idea that because some people feel a level of shame for something that they've created, nobody is allowed to receive feedback and there can be no ratings, is such an unhealthy approach to self-esteem and society.
Listen,
like, feedback has upset people, so we've done away with feedback. Like,
I made a video for GoDaddy. It was not well received. I got the message. We never did it again, but we kept trucking and we produced content that wasn't like that going forward. Like it's okay to make a video that gets some dislikes.
It's okay to feel sad that people don't like your thing. And in fact, I would say that is increasingly for creators an important stage to go through, because it teaches you how to have your vision of expression interact with an audience who may or may not like it, and how to speak more. It's feedback. It helps you be more effective.
At what point do you think they'll just start limiting what videos you see on your homepage? It's like, well, we only wanted to give creators who are sad a chance. So these are all videos. Like, you don't get to watch ESPN anymore.
They already do. They've already got the news bar, which is all, by the way, the most downvoted thing on
hilarious.
YouTube, which is like, what do you know? You're forcing these videos down my throat. They've all, everything related to COVID vaccines has a 10%, which is abysmal rate. I wonder if that was a big decision, if it was related to, and I think what happens is, quite frankly, they are turning down the knob of the audience, basically. The audience is going to get less and less say as we cater more towards established creators on YouTube in some cases, and also corporations that are now super interested on YouTube.
Mostly corporations. So when I look at at least for me,
advertisers, yeah.
When I look at the news feed for YouTube, Phil DeFranco's not on there. It's all CNN, Fox, MSNBC.
Oh, the ones that they force upon you are those ones.
They don't even go for the big creators. It's not like the biggest organic YouTube creator is featured there.
No, it's all legacy media with not a lot of views and horrible upvotes.
This is probably old news for some people, but this was the thing where somebody did a study of what the view count has to be for PewDiePie to get on trending
versus Jimmy Fallon. It was
Jimmy Kimmel
CoffeeZilla prior to CoffeeZilla. Yeah, when he was Coffee Break.
Yeah, and just how eager YouTube is to make you watch Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel, and how absolutely impossibly hard it is for PewDiePie in comparison. Like, he has to do 100 times the views in the same amount of time to be considered trending.
Yeah, SportsCenter, I think, was the one that was most able to just get whatever they wanted.
Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah. They just, and it's really a shame. Broadcast yourself nonsense. This is semi-related, unless there's anything else that you wanted to say with regards to
my
this.
only question is, like, yeah, what do you do? This seems to be the organic. If we talk about entities as sentient, governments have their own consciousness and corporations have their own consciousness, not in the sense of feeling sadness, but just they act in their own best interest, and they get the organisms within them, the people, to do that, or they replace them, basically. And they have systems set up, like boards of directors, that will just fire you if you don't put profit first. So other than never going public, what do you do? What do you do if you're the founder of YouTube 10 years ago? You're going, I really hope we don't sell out and start hail big corporate nonsense where we make our product worse.
We discussed this. You don't go public. You need, and I think we talked about this, the removal of the shareholders from where truly all they care about is their dividend return or whatever they're able to sell the stock for. You need the leadership structure to be closely involved, I think, with moral decision making, such that they feel it weigh on them, and then they need to probably have a background and be trained, or at least even just by their mom and their dad, in caring about right and wrong and trying to do things based on principle and not just on profit.
Yeah, they do. I mean, so first of all, I'm going to say this, and Amazon is absolutely profit focused, although they don't have a profit because they reinvest it all, but they're absolutely money focused. But Amazon does seem to aggressively maintain the product first focus, at least for now. They don't pay their workers, but that's not actually for this quarter's profit. That's because the consumers demand low cost and instant shipping. And so Amazon completely screws their workers, but in the effort of making the best product possible. I think that it seems like Bezos does have a maniacal focus on
the long term,
the 10-year plan.
The 20-year, the 50-year plan.
Sure, and product first. He does not seem to do that quarterly profit thing that I think a lot of corporations do.
Well, I think you've raised an interesting point, which is this is a short-term decision-making for YouTube. It's not going to put them out of business, but it's like this is one chip against most people will not like
when
this.
YouTube is beaten out by a different decentralized Web3 video player, it will be an accumulation of decisions like this, making people eager for an alternative that does focus on product first.
Yes.
And so, I don't think this alone won't do it, but I do think this is, and I could be wrong, this is the kind of thing that I think just wouldn't fly at Amazon. Hey, let's do something that people don't want that's going to make our product worse because it's going to make
Well, that's not totally true.
advertisers happy.
So they I know they put like the Amazon Choice thing higher in rankings. Like it's actually, there's obviously a combination of short-term and long-term decision making, and quite frankly, customers. There's a step function of like, did I leave that or not? And it's like you can weigh them down with crappy things that increase short-term profits and not see any sort of movement from leaving your platform. I think that's partially why, is that it's not like a linear, we destroyed the customer experience and tomorrow we saw a decrease in users. It's like, no, nothing happened. Well, but we just made more money.
But it will. This is kind of what I'm saying. Like we wrote an article about the X-Men movie franchise. I don't know if people probably never saw it because no one read our articles.
There was 30 people who
I'll give you some summary of it. The tracking for Rotten Tomatoes ratings. Well, why don't you tell it? You wrote it.
Okay, so this is many years ago. My question was, I was like, why does X-Men First Class, which is an awesome movie, do so bad at the theaters?
At the box office.
And then the one that came after, which was like the Wolverine, do so good. And there's more reasons, which is Hugh Jackman is a bankable character. But one of the things that I think is instructive that is that if you look at a ratings graph of box office income, up and down, and Rotten Tomatoes, they're all over the place if you just do movie to movie. But if you slide the, let me get this correct,
slide the
Rotten Tomatoes back. No, you slide Rotten Tomatoes back, right?
You slide the box office back so that the amount of money the movie made is in front of the Rotten Tomatoes rating for the previous movie.
Sure. What you see is that like the amount of money being made by these tracks very, very well with how well received the prior movie was, which is to say people make decisions if they could go see the movie, not on how good this movie is, but on how good the last movie was.
So the new crop of X-Men mutant movie comes out. No one sees it in theaters because the previous movie sucked. I think it was Dark Phoenix with
Dark Phoenix.
The original
and by the way,
right?
Apocalypse sucked, which is why no one went to go see Dark Phoenix,
right? Which
also sucked.
And so they're like, oh, the past movie sucked. I'm not going to see this one. But then over the course of being on an airplane or having it show up in Netflix or whatever it is, people see the movie, just not in the theaters, and go, oh, that was actually good. And then they go give it another shot. And that's why the next movie does well.
And some studio exec somewhere is going, oh, wow, Apocalypse just isn't a good villain. I seriously wonder if people are making these things. It's like Apocalypse should have been the biggest movie ever. Like for my generation growing up watching the X-Men cartoons, Apocalypse was primo comic book villain, one that you really want. And that's right up there, by the way, with Venom, who has been is done middling in the box office and it hasn't been a good movie. So anyway, I don't want to stay on that too much, but there seems to be...
Well, I'm saying there's a time delay. If like no one's going to stop using YouTube because they get rid of the dislikes, so then some YouTube exec will think it was a win.
Yes.
Not counting for the fact that 95% of the user base thinks this makes their product worse and eventually leaves when a better alternative comes up.
And by the way, this occurs in every business, including our own, which is like, look, when we make a less than best video, we might have our best month ever in terms of income, and it's like, so.
Yeah, but good news, dude. I don't even check our income. I only check how videos do.
Well, yes, how they do, it is not just represented by views, it's represented by sentiment. It's represented by upvotes and downvotes.
I look at those. I look at those. I actually do look at those because I was looking at the Timothée Chalamet video, which just has a bunch of people in the comments who are going, it's because he's handsome, which is like, yeah, okay, that's fair. But also I wonder if this is how most people feel or if this is just people who make comments on Charisma on Command videos. So I checked the likes and saw if it did better or worse than our average video. That's a very useful heuristic for me in terms of what videos to make in the future. So it will be a bummer when that's not a feature anymore.
There is still private. Well,
yeah, but you know what? You don't want to dislike.
But you're not getting.
Dislike isn't. This is the funny part.
Yeah.
When you dislike a YouTube video, it's not meant to be feedback to the creator. It's a warning to other viewers.
It's both. And what's funny is like what we found is when we didn't publicly do it, people used it less, which was good because we're trying to reduce hate. It's like this is such a ridiculous...
Dude, it's a warning to other people.
Everyone at YouTube is so freaking smart, and these are data analysis scientists. And to trot out that as like, wow, when we made this thing not visible, people used it less.
This is like if
therefore
Yelp,
it's working.
Imagine if Yelp only had 5-star reviews. Business owners were starting to feel bad when they got bad reviews. Restaurant owners were upset that yes, they had cockroaches in the kitchen, but they don't want to hear about it on the internet. So now you can either not rate a restaurant or give them 5 stars. Yeah. And we found that that's made restaurant owners much happier.
And I mean,
yeah, that's not helpful to people trying to figure out where to eat.
Yeah, well, this has happened on Netflix. They took away the star rating and they added a percentage for you because, and maybe that creates a better experience. I don't know. Maybe it makes it harder for you to find stuff. What related to the corporate thing, I watched not every moment of the Will Smith thing that came out on his Best Shape of My Life stuff. And I called you a little bit tilted. Mm-hmm. And I was like, dude, is Will Smith pretending to write his own book? Because as I was going through it, and let me just say, there were elements of the show that if you watched it, it's Will Smith. He's out of shape. He's getting into good shape because he was in the pandemic. And so he's set this goal to lose X amount of weight in X amount of weeks. He also has the additional looming deadline of he needs to finish his autobiography. And so there's tension throughout the thing. And in order to try to make a story compelling, high stakes of the trade-offs between getting in the best shape, which requires time and effort, and creating time to write his book, which creates time and effort, and is emotionally draining because he's talking about childhood trauma. And I sincerely believe that it can be draining to do that. But what was frustrating to me is that I didn't hear them, at least when I said, talk about Mark Manson, who wrote the book. Mm-hmm. Will Smith discussed things, and it was very I was like, wait a second. So this guy has 16 weeks to lose a reasonable amount of weight and discuss his past. Yep. Now, I know that it's challenging to go over trauma, and I don't want to minimize that, but I was like, that this is framed as such a
hero's journey.
Hero's journey is frustrating. There's an entire, and it was like, this is just emblematic of YouTube, which is, it's so out of touch. There's an entire team of people at every workout he goes to. When he sits down to write the book, he's got it on a 75-inch TV on a Google Doc. He's not in front of a computer hardly ever, and he's talking about things to people. Now, maybe he's sitting down in the wee hours of the night cranking it out. My impression is that Mark Manson, who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, wrote the book, did interviews with him.
There might have been other ghost writers as well. I don't know if Mark did it by himself.
But. Yes, but he wrote it, right? He's on the book. He wasn't heavily, I didn't hear him mentioned. If he was, he definitely was not heavily featured in the show.
I don't know for sure the details, but yes, Mark, I think, was heavily involved in writing that book.
It just reminded, I was like, man, this is so out of touch. There's, team of people.
I just haven't spoken to him. I spoke to him when he got the book, but I haven't spoken to him since, so I don't know. This isn't coming from Mark. This is my guess, is that Mark did a lot of that writing in terms of putting words on a paper.
Yes, and I was like, here's a guy who's getting in solid shape with an entire team of people who, by the way, he stands up multiple times. Like, most people can't afford to stand up a personal trainer while he's in Abu Dhabi or some far-flung place to go dedicate himself wholly to it. And the parts that were interesting that I thought were good were him discussing his childhood. Mm-hmm. The parts that I found lost me was how hard it is to get in shape and talk about your past at the same time, which is like...
Well, this is the whole Ben Simmons thing. For people who don't know, Ben Simmons doesn't want to play for the 76ers. And so now the thing he's saying is that he's having mental health issues, and so he can't play. And the Sixers saying, okay, that's fine. Don't play. Just travel with the team, practice with the team. He's saying, no, I can't do that. I can't do anything. And the people that are most upset at this are actually people who have mental health issues because they're saying, I have very serious mental health issues. I don't know if Ben Simmons does or doesn't, but even if he does, I have to go to work. I have to figure out a way to function in some capacity. And it seems like there's just this whole, it's like a spit in the face to a guy who you don't even have to play the game. Just show up and travel with your team and you'll get $30 million a year. And he's saying he can't. And people are saying, I am suicidally depressed, but I don't have the option to just get $30 million a year. I have to go to work or else I'll get fired. And it seems like Will Smith's in a similar boat of it's not that it's easy to talk about your trauma. It's not that it's easy to get in shape. Mm-hmm. It's weird to act like it's superhumanly heroic or like it's a abnormally hard mountain to climb.
And I don't blame him for that. I blame, by the way, because he didn't.
No, it's
somebody
editors.
else shot it,
it's
edited it, created it, and told this tale. I was like, it felt tone deaf to me. So the parts that I liked, and it's I don't actually blame Will Smith for any of this. You're allowed to be rich and unhappy or rich and frustrated or rich and overwhelmed. All of that is totally fine. It's the decision to broadcast this is the issue.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting is, because I've seen for Charisma on Command a lot
or broadcast it, but just don't make it seem like it's just be like, hey, like everyone else, I got a little bit in worse shape since the pandemic. I'm going to try to get in better shape, and this is me trying to do it. It's not superhuman, but it's what it is. So like, tune in.
Yeah. So yeah, it felt, that to me felt tone deaf. The parts that I did like were him reviewing his past through a different lens. I've seen him talk about his past and his dad and the work ethic and how good it was and drive, and I will stay on this treadmill till I die. And having him review those lessons with fresher eyes, older eyes, how it affected him, how it has made him relate to his own emotions, how it made him raise his kids, he's told the story before, but when his daughter Willow was, I whipped my hair back and forth after her like first show or second show. She's like, okay, I'm ready to go home now. He's like, what do you mean? We're not done. Like, the mission isn't over. She's like, but don't you care that I'm done? And he's like, Then he woke up in the morning and she shaved her head. She was 9 years old.
That's awesome.
She just shaved her head.
Wait, sorry. This was when shooting the video, or this was when touring?
This is when touring. He woke up the next morning. She's like, hi, Daddy. And she had no hair.
Because she wanted to stop touring and go home?
She was just done. She was over whipping her hair back and forth. Which, by the way, is like, yeah, don't put a little girl on
That's awesome.
stage.
Good for her.
I was like, you know what? What a gift to have her teach you that lesson. And he says it. He's like, that was something clicked in me that day. And he talks about how
such a boss move for a 9-year-old.
He talks about it from oldest to youngest, how they got different experiences of him, and like how he softened over the course of it. And he's like, that was the moment that I actually got it. And my two older sons, Jaden and I think Trey, didn't get that compassionate, understanding side of me. But yeah, it's interesting to see. I think it's very common in the first half of your life, if things turn out pretty well, there's a lionization of everything that your parents did. You know what I mean? It's like fucking. It was. He taught me. We built this brick by brick, and he's told these stories in the past. And like my dad said, you complete the mission or you die. And I knew that day that I was going to do it, and it was like, oh great, that's amazing. And by the way, the mission was he had to go pick up food from the store, and he stopped to play with his friend on the way home. And his dad came and found him and said, "You're either dead or the mission is complete." And that transformed his life. And to have him reflect on that and be like. Also, my dad, which he mentioned in the past, he's like, I watched him beat my mom. I watched him, and I, just learned that I had to please him and entertain and keep everybody laughing in order to keep things going. And the part that I did kind of enjoy about the fitness was he's like, I'm getting in the best shape of my life for these cameras. He's like, the cameras are getting in the way of me getting in the best shape of my life. Like, I'm trying to put on a show for you and shoot B-roll and talk about my workout. And I'm instead of working out, instead of like doing it. And he's like, I'm done, which seemed, and I agreed, like, oh, that's growth for you.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome.
So is that the last footage they have of him working out?
It's mostly like, there's not a lot after that.
That's awesome.
There's like, he continues to do it, not as regimented, more sporadically as he can, given the amount of like grueling work for him it is to review his past and cry about it and share it with his family. He continues to work, but just not as hard. And I was like, okay, that like it's still a really interesting story, and that part for me is the emotional core. And notwithstanding what I said about, I think the decision to make it a hero's journey of getting in shape is so hard when you have 30 people helping you.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed those aspects of it, it was just interesting to see him reflect on the same stories that I've heard him tell in interviews from the 90s and 2000s with a very different understanding of both sides of it. It's like, yes, it made me Will Smith. And it also made me literally not in touch with any of my emotions.
Well, this is the question that I have just in general, which is so recognizing that at 50 or however old he is, and then changing your ways, or recognizing that when you become a parent, that seems really valuable. But I also wonder, not for the beating of his mom, but for being hard on him, if it's appropriate to be genuinely grateful for that, because he did become who he is and get out of the hood and become incredibly successful and achieve his dreams. And I wonder if I wonder if at the end of the day he'll reach a place where he's not sad about it and just goes, it was great for me in some ways, and it's time for me to shed a lot of the symptoms of it that I still retain as an adult.
I think so. What I've learned with regards to that, and I think any lesson can take you in the wrong direction. The one is like, oh, I should be grateful for this because it helped. And what has helped me lately that I think he experienced was like, you know, it hurt, but it made me Will Smith. And every time he thought about how it upset him, he's like, yep, but I'm here, so I can't be upset about it. And probably what he did, or sort of I saw a little bit in the thing, was created space to just be fucking pissed about it. To just be like, you beat up my mom, you made me an entertainer, you made me a clown, and I don't want to thank you in this moment for the fact that I also got rich as a result.
Yeah, I also don't want to do, let's not do the smash technique.
Yeah.
From Kathy Newman video. Of course, McMahon fans. Let's not lump beating your mom and telling you that if you're going to pick up food for the family, you should deliver the food and then go to your friend's house after and not do reverse order. Those seems like those are two different lessons. So like complete the mission seems like it should be categorized differently than I'm going to beat your mom because I'm upset. You know what I'm saying?
It was all tied together because it's like everything from you came with terror. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like everything related to you. Like, what does it mean if I complete the mission or I'm dead? Who's going to kill me? You know what I mean? Like those are tied together. Like the severity with which he could get angry, it's unclear to a kid when that line gets crossed. So I don't think it's totally inappropriate to lump upsetting dad with the incidents where sometimes he was upset and he hit people, and including Will. Like,
yes, but learning the importance of completing something may have been how he was able to get his first record published. Like there might be.
Well, yes,
you can imagine a dad teaching that lesson and then not beating the mom and having it be a better, having it be good.
How does one learn to complete something? One way to do it is say, I'll kill you if you don't do it. That's one way to learn to complete something. Another way to learn to complete something is to say, it's generally a good idea to complete what you do because, you know what I mean? There's a more subtle way to teach that.
Just go, hey, me and your mom were sitting at home hungry because you have the food and you're at your friend's house.
Yeah.
It would sure be great if we could have the food first. It's just not a bad lesson on its own, I guess. Like, yes, packaging it as or I'll kill you is obviously the part where it becomes bad.
Yes, or something is going horribly, terribly wrong. And again, I think today he doesn't hate his dad is dead, or anything like that, but I think has a more nuanced understanding of him, and also sees the similarities in how he was, and I think feels guilty for he sort of talks about with his first sons. He talked a little bit, which was interesting. I would have liked to see more about After Earth and how he felt like he was like bringing Jaden in. They like, we're going to do it and had to win. And it was like the worst box office and critical failure. And he's like, and Jaden took the heat. Like everyone was like, Will is great. Jaden sucks. So
wasn't their first movie together, Pursuit of Happiness, which was lauded as an incredible
that was
film?
when Jaden was very little.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Their first film was incredible and very well received by critics.
Yes. I guess After Earth was the first one where Jaden was closer to, he wasn't yet there, but an adult.
Jaden's arc is interesting. I didn't know this till I was making this most recent Will Smith video, but Jaden, I remember him being super hated. And I guess what I didn't realize is the come up where he made Icon or Iconic, and then it was incredibly popular. And then he thought that there was too much plastic in the ocean, so he launched a water bottle company that does cardboard box water bottle, which is super popular. And I see in Whole Foods and airports.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. No one knows that it's him. Well, not no one. Someone's gonna be like, I knew, but it's just interesting. He's had this huge.
I knew the Icon Living. I knew that one.
He basically just saw plastic in the ocean while he was surfing and said, that's really fucked up. And then looked into it and said, this seems like a big problem. And then launched an entire brand that simultaneously helps consumers in the US buy non-plastic bottles and then also helps get clean water to people who don't have access to clean water. He just did it because he wanted to help. Interesting. So he's had this whole interesting. He's had that people don't really know about.
I think he's no longer in the. He was very poorly received, and I think with the younger generation, he's less so. But for those of us who were alive when After Earth came out, and he seemed to be a drag on Will Smith, who, by the way, hasn't really had a huge box office success in a while. That it clearly wasn't his fault because he picked movies without Jaden that just tanked. Anyway, it was an interesting series at the end that I did enjoy elements of and just disliked the. Oh my God, it's so hard to get in shape with 30 people and taking you to Abu Dhabi to try to lose a pound a week. Who could possibly manage such a thing? But I don't blame him for that. I that was the narrative arc that they decided that this tale needed to have. So. Anyways, what else you got?
Well, this is a little bit about sensationalism. We've talked about this. You did videos on Trump and how he used to attack everybody in the primary, and then I think everybody's kind of they're like, oh, I wish we could get back to the days where, you know, politics was about the policies and it wasn't attacking character and stuff like that. And I happened to stumble upon this John McCain video that I want to show you because I think it's awesome. I don't know if, Justin, you have it teed up.
We're scared. We're scared of an Obama presidency, and I'll tell you why. I'm concerned about someone that cohorts with domestic terrorists such as Ayers.
I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as President of the United States. Now, look.
But it's also like he's an Arab. He's like, no, he's not. He's decent.
Well, no, because he's cutting off. It was the birth certificate.
I know.
Thing. Remember, he's not a U.S. citizen. I don't trust him.
It's
and I watched that. I was like, man, that's awesome that he didn't take the cheap shot. He defended his opponent, and he lost. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh man, this would be so great. Like I love for politicians to get back to this, to defending each other's character and just having policy debates. And I think if Trump had run instead of him in that election, he probably would have beaten Obama because he would have just.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Aggressively
Obama was amazing as a candidate.
He would have just trumped it though. He would have just stirred up all that birther shenanigans. Yeah. You know, he just would have gone for stuff that wasn't true. He definitely would have done better than John McCain. Let's put it that way. And so I was watching this and I went, well, this is a bummer because that's awesome and admirable, and you wish it would be how people would run in the future, but also apparently not a good strategy if you actually want to be president.
This is what sucks about democracy is that, and look, I'm just picking on her, that she gets to vote just as much as anyone else. And if she's in a state that is hotly contested, like Florida, her vote counts. And me being in California, my vote just doesn't count. Thanks to the Electoral College. So it is a huge bummer that democracy has built into it. I mean, we've talked about this in the past. It is democracy as a universal perfect good is an idea that is new, and I think that there is something to the fear of populist government. Now, I don't have a better solution in terms of we'll just have a couple of technocrats or elite people do it because they seem to be screwy and they'll just create stuff that benefits them. But it's there's a lot of issues with letting, even if you had perfect democratic votes of things, like you'd see horrible governance. Like, honestly, I wonder if we could destroy the world faster if we had a democratic vote on just so many issues. Yeah. I don't want to move away too quickly, but I was reminded of you were doing it of Dave Portnoy, we talked about how he's like received a bunch of these allegations against him, and he's succeeding by playing the dirty game instead of, like, he could have just been like, these aren't true, I'm not going to talk about X, Y, and Z, I'm not going to poke. But instead, he has thrown everything at the wall. And like one of them, he retweeted a guy who said, like, these guys at Business Insider, Morning Brew admit to using misinformation. And I clicked the link, and it was a guy saying, like, the way to go viral is just, you got to just throw a lot of darts and see what sticks. Nothing in that indicates misinformation. That means just like tweet a lot. You could tweet a lot of true things. And I looked at Dave's wall, like the leaps that he makes in order to put down the people that have come at him are bad faith. They're the same type of attack that was received against him is the one that he's responding with, and it's working.
This is kind of what I'm saying. Like, what they've seen that what goes viral isn't necessarily the most comprehensive, accurate report. It's the thing that incenses you, mostly enraging is the number one thing that gets you to share, and fear is another thing that gets you to share. And that's with presidential elections too. And so when John McCain runs on, there's nothing to be scared of with Obama in terms of his character, but I'll make policy that I think is better. It's just less effective than when you run on, this person is going to destroy your way of life.
Bro, I just saw a link on Reddit that is, if the Republicans win in 2020 and 2022, it's the end of our democracy.
Exactly. You need and so unfortunately,
and by all the comments are like, oh yeah, but that's true. It's actually true because they're going to, and it's actually the end of democracy. Yeah, like mark it on your calendars, 2020, 2022, democracy ends in the United States of America.
It's unfortunately
but it existed up until 2019 or whatever. 2022, 2024. I said that wrong.
It's not a bad strategy because what you need, very, very few people change their mind and vote back and forth between the parties. So it's all about voter turnout. People will turn out if they're terrified. If you actually thought, you never vote in presidential elections. If you actually thought that the governor, let's say, because you don't think that California is going to go blue no matter what, but let's say the governor was going to destroy your life, come at your house with pitchforks, flay you, you'd go vote.
I'd move first and vote second. But yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like, it's unfortunately fear and rage get people to take action. And so people have learned the McCain thing doesn't work. As much as you love to see it, we don't back it with our voter turnout or our votes. And so evolutionarily, it's just been beaten out of the political system.
But I will say at the same time, yes, and long term, it's, I think, better than it's ever been in terms of like, most people know that their actual lives are not threatened, which I don't know was always the case in
sorry. I thought you were saying the political system's the best it's ever been in terms of collaborating, which I don't agree with. But you're saying that human life, no matter who is president in the U.S., seems to keep on trucking.
And around the world. Now, granted, the Weinsteins talk about, like, yes, things have gotten better, but the risk of one person touching one button and exploding the whole thing has also gone up. So it could literally end tomorrow in a way that it...
Well, we talked about this, so I'll just keep it brief, but your contentment in life is anchored to your expectations and the performance of your neighbors. And so, yes, if you took a lot of people, even if they're in poorer areas, and just dropped them off in the 20s or 40s or 50s, with the amount of food and technology they have, they would instantly feel incredibly fortunate. Mm-hmm. But the fact that human quality of life on average is rising doesn't matter, because if the wealth gap rises or if people's expectations are anchored really high, then dissatisfaction is going to be at an all-time high. Mm-hmm. And so I get what you're saying in terms of, things like, compared to the history of humanity, things are actually great even for the people that wish that their lot was better. But that doesn't matter, because if their expectations, if the gap between reality and expectation, or reality and what you see in your neighbors, that's what determines satisfaction. So,
people could be less satisfied.
I think probably dissatisfaction could be at an all-time high, even while quality of life on average is also at an all-time high.
Mm. Well, then with that, I guess it's too broad to say, but I still see an upward trajectory, and that is because I think the opportunity to be dissatisfied is almost like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs stage higher than, like, I don't have food and shelter, at which point, like, dissatisfaction is almost a strange word to
But I don't think it feels, I actually genuinely don't think it feels that way. Mm-hmm. Like, I agree that it might feel in terms of your psychic and psychological experience day to day, if you're just back in the day of being a farmer and you're kind of hungry all the time, you're a kid, you got to go out there and do the work of planting stuff and harvesting stuff, but that's just how it is. You could be happy, I think, even though you're a little bit hungry all the time, or even though one of your 6 siblings died of disease that would be heartbreaking today. You just go, like, this is the path, and it's all good, actually. It's hard, but it's good. And I think you could have a much better lot in life today, but be genuinely, like, more anxious, more depressed, more angry, by every metric, more unhappy. So I do think it's the experiential part is real.
Yes, I agree. And within that, I do see an upward, quote unquote, evolution of, like, couldn't even really have the time to be dissatisfied because I had very little to compare it to. Oh my gosh, I have so much to compare it to. I actually feel worse than I would have back then, potentially. But from that dissatisfaction become other realizations that might take you to a, Maslow's hierarchy or spiral dynamics higher level.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's also could be some generations in between of just like, man, this sucks, and I'm totally dissatisfied because other people have more than me, and they have better plastic surgery than I do. And
NFTs have really bummed me out in terms of the next stage of human evolution, because I, for a while, was of the mindset that between VR and AI, we would reach a point where there was no scarcity. Mm-hmm. Just for the first time in human existence, abundance for everyone. At which point, I think you could have a fully focused society on enlightenment or whatever you want to be, spirituality, consciousness, betterment of other people, because you have no scarcity. And then NFTs came around. I was like, oh, we're going to try to just duplicate scarcity in the virtual world because of the hunger for status and prestige and all that stuff. So in terms of like that upward trajectory that you were just talking about, it could be the case, but It'll be slower, I guess, than I thought. When I saw that come out, I was like, oh, we're just going to try really hard to replicate this wealth gap in the VR world.
Naval talks about it and in a way that made more sense to me, which is like, look, we still have most of our lives in the physical space. And so having a digital world that doesn't closely analog to the physical space doesn't make sense yet, because there is real world scarcity. And so when an artist makes a piece, it took him he has a scarce amount of time and a scarce amount of resources and energy with which to do that. So being able to recreate that scarcity at this stage in the digital world is important, because we still live primarily in a real world of scarcity, such that if we got to a point where we had increasing abundance in the real world, it would make more sense to map that to the digital world, which I thought was an interesting take. But I had
but then that's the same. So unfortunately, that's the same problem we had pre-VR, which is how do you create abundance?
How do you create abundance
in the physical world
in the meat space?
When land is fixed, water's fixed, populations are growing, so
psychedelics, dude. Yeah, change your perception, right?
Yes.
That seems to be the only way.
I mean, the greatest gift you could ever give someone, I think, is having them be able to recode their expectations for life. Mm-hmm. I feel like that would be the greatest gift if you were solving for happiness.
Yes. I mean, Tony says something. Trade your, your expectations for appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Not easy to do.
No, but I think that would be the single fastest way to create a happy human.
I agree. Yeah. No, if every day you woke up and Men in Black flashy thinged, and you thought you were in some slum the night before, you woke up in your house. And then you turn on the water, like, what?
Yeah,
every day would just be thrilling. Now it would kind of be like Groundhog Day, because you wouldn't get much done. And then eventually you would die happy in your house of discovering water for the first time after 100 days in a row. Totally random. So last night I watched a video. So Jordan Peterson's daughter, Mikhaila, is getting a divorce. And I didn't know what to make of it. I was like, should I even talk about this? Because I don't have a take, but I just bring it up because the feeling that I had, I was like, I think this exposes a weakness in Jordan's philosophy about the world, honestly. And I don't think the fact that she got divorced did, but I've heard him talk about relationships in a way, this is the most important, best, and only thing to do once you hit a certain level of maturity.
Sorry, so you and I have talked about this off air, but can you just start by saying, give your summary of Jordan Peterson's
of what I believe Jordan has said
philosophy is, and then we can talk about why the divorce.
Got it. So broadly, well, I don't even know if it counters it, but what things that I've heard him say include, he's talked about professional athletes and been like, it is the conquest, which I agree, for more and more women at some point is simultaneously remarkable that you can do that and unfulfilling. And really what you ought to do is be able to get a lot of different women if you're a professional athlete, but choose one, because that is where the fulfillment of life comes from.
That's the Jordan Peterson take.
Yes. And I've found that to be unsatisfying, because when challenged, people be like, well, what about this? Be like, well, what else are you going to do? Like, it's not a very complete discussion of being single or polyamory, or of the dangers of attaching yourself to one person and saying it's going to be forever. By the way, I think it made more sense in Jordan's upbringing in his small town. I think his daughter had a very different life than he is exposed to a lot more things, a lot more options. And I think that we need we need a better defensive marriage than I think than he's given, quite frankly. For our society. And I've been dissatisfied with what he's done, and it breaking down so close to him. I would be very interested in what he had to say, because I think it does expose, like, hey, attaching yourself to someone else is maybe not always the best. Maybe it's a risky endeavor. Maybe it's, you know what I mean? Maybe
it's definitely risky. I mean, his whole medically induced coma came from drug withdrawal that came from mental anguish he had because he thought his wife was going to die. Mm-hmm. Like, that whole spiral came from that loss being so painful. So certainly it comes with the risk of emotional pain. And I think he would say that it's well worth it, but it's definitely not all upside to be in a monogamous marriage. But I don't think he would say it was.
I agree. What I've felt in the past is that he has not adequately addressed, like he talks about clearly and I think eloquently, about the downsides of serial encounters and oftentimes the lack of fulfillment that can result from that.
Oh, you think that he's...
I don't think he's given the devil its due with regards to marriage, which is like,
that's fair.
It's got a lot of downsides, and it's got a huge problem, and it doesn't work out most of the time, and people often dislike each other to the point of never wanting to hang out again, even after having created children together. Like, and I'm not saying that's the case with his daughter and her. I don't know what their situation is, and I don't know if this is going to cause it, but I've wanted from him a more complete addressing of the seriousness and the complexity of the issue of setting yourself up with someone else, and also an acknowledgement of the fact that as technology is advanced and as we're able to supplant a lot of the reasons that people did get married, which is like you needed kids to till the farm, you needed someone to take care of you were old. It's like increasingly there's an app for that. So, so I'm open to it, but like give me a full-throated defense of it in modern society that acknowledges the sincere and serious downsides to lifelong commitment and marriage, which, one of them being divorce. And it's fine if he can't do that, but this is something that I think about consistently in my day to day. And the person that I want to talk to the most is Russell Brand.
Really?
Related to this,
I pick Clooney.
Clooney is interesting too. Like the guys that's
the guy. If I could have one, listen, we're both going to take truth serum. We're not going to put on air, and we're just going to sit and chat about relationships and marriage and monogamy and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. George Clooney is the guy I want to sit across the table from for sure.
Yeah, well, I would say it's broadly speaking, it's the guys that I know have gone to I think have gone to the absolute bottom of the experience of doing whatever you want sexually and dating and having famous and less famous and public relationships who have done all of that.
So Russell
and chosen something else.
Russell would be awesome to talk to as well. He does have a penchant for addiction that I think might make being single more dangerous and less fulfilling because I think my impression is it's tough for him to engage in casual relationships without it becoming compulsive and addictive. And so I think that for him, marriage might also be a way to actually free himself from that cycle where he's like, if me being single is just me becoming addicted to sex, basically. That's my hypothesis for part of it based on what I've seen him talk about.
Yeah. I'd be curious of Mikhaila's perspective, growing up with a dad that has pretty conservative perceptions of marriage and all that kind of stuff, and having an experience that I'm sure was not easy for her to step away we're going to get a divorce. I'd be super interested in what she thinks about it and what she reflects on that. So
Justin, actually, could you just go ahead and get George Clooney and Leonardo DiCaprio and we'll just sit down. Charlie and I'll just moderate. We can just
Leonardo
have them
DiCaprio
discuss.
is another interesting guy.
I just want to hear them discuss lifelong single versus
So Leonardo DiCaprio is a private person, it seems like only really shows up to talk about things. It's a running joke in Hollywood. Quite frankly, I don't know how he hasn't gone down for Me Too, that his girlfriends are always very, very young comparatively to him.
Not like 19. They're like 24.
I think he starts dating some at 19. I could be wrong.
Well, I don't know.
I think, and which is...
I'd be surprised. But
yeah. Which, by the way, I think, and we talked about this last time, I think that you should be able to date a 19-year-old without having the... Twitter descend upon you and say that this is an abuse of power or something like that. Otherwise, while I do agree that can occur in those situations, and it's probably not the wisest decision, we want to treat people like adults when they're adults. And otherwise, if they can't make decisions about who they have sex with, it doesn't really make sense for them to be deciding to go to war, voting for U.S. president. Like you need that. You need basic agency and responsibility in order to make those decisions. So, yeah, talk to Leo as well if he wants to come on.
All right, so Justin, it's George Clooney, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Get him to answer the question that he's never answered in front of anyone ever before, which is what's up with all the young girlfriends, dude? How are you fulfilled? And the stories I will tell you in LA, which I normally wouldn't repeat, but increasingly they're like turning out to be true. Like everyone was saying, Will Smith is a swinger, and he and his wife, way before the August Alsina thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then he writes his book. It's like, I was doing it too. It's like, it's all true.
They were rumored to be open. When I was doing open relationships, they were rumored to be open. I was like,
I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And then he writes it and it's true. So the stories that you hear about Leonardo DiCaprio, which are complete, what is the word? There's no basis upon this.
Yeah.
But it's like from the person who was at the party. It said that, he has a lot of random sex with people at parties. And the story that I heard is he has an assistant who will show you out afterwards in a polite,
I wonder if he does
but
NDAs.
firm way. I have no idea.
Well, that might be why no one comes out.
Maybe. Who
The
knows?
old NDA.
Who knows? Anyway, that was total hearsay. So take that and a quarter will buy you a pack of gum in 1950. So anything else?
Yeah, this was just I wanted to give you this pitch live because I think that we have our next new hire for our business.
Got it.
It's my favorite email that I've ever received. So subject, Charisma on Demand YouTube channel.
Don't be mean.
Hi, Ben and Chris. I would like to offer you services running your YouTube ads. This is the best email I've ever gotten. I love it so much. So I just want to say to whoever wrote that email, thank you, and you're hired. Yeah,
That's the whole email.
No, I'm not going to bore everyone with the details, but just the best. It's just awesome. Like,
Yeah.
And it made me. I won't go bad on anyone, but I know that there are teachers out there who talk about business and networking and copywriting, and a lot of them, they will say to just spam people, just send 100 emails a day. And that might work, but every single person that I know of that ended up with a mentor or a job, they did not do it that way. They did it with very targeted, very thoughtful.
They went sniper
outreach. It always trumps those kind of garbage, hey, Ben and Chris, Charisma on Demand emails.
I do notice that. When I think of the networkers, there's the, if you want to call the shotgun approach, which like tries to keep in touch with everybody. I can think of one person that I know that kind of does that pretty well.
It is so common, though, when you buy an online business course or you go to some like rah-rah 2-day seminar, that's the advice. Mm-hmm. I can think about several online gurus that tell people to do that. Oh, you're going to be a copywriter? Send these. Oh, you want to do sales? Like, do that. And they're completely untargeted, and they email us. Like, sometimes people ask us if we want help with our mobile app for like a game or something. Like, you don't even know what our company does. This was such a waste of time for you to write this.
Yeah.
And then I think the people who actually have gotten great mentorships or jobs, and it's always been so much more specific, researching the person, figuring out what they're working on,
following up with them, and it's almost always follow up is important. Like in
buying
a way
a ticket to their event, spending $300 to get in person with them, to give them a book. That was the first interaction for someone. I bought a ticket to the event. I went up. I said, hey, I saw a video of yours and I thought you might like this book. And the guy went, oh my God, I've been thinking about buying this book. And then they exchanged emails, and then he followed up a week later or a month later, whatever it is.
And it's also playing the long game. Yeah.
And then he got a job at his dream company.
The long game is what does it as well, which is you are willing to maintain contact, not every day, but over a period of weeks and sometimes months is a common thread as well. If you're trying to break into someone's who is tough to get to's like inner circle or be part of their company. So, no, I agree. I said there was one person who does the shotgun, but I realized that's not to meet people. That's to maintain relationships. I was thinking of Jordan Harbinger, who has said that he has a list, and he just will text 2 or 3 people a day and then cross them off the list and move down, such that his extended network of people who've been on his podcast, and I guess I'm on there somewhere, will receive a check-in like every couple of months.
Yes.
And I don't think he does it as religiously anymore, but like I have received from him, and I believe that many other people have, like 1 or 2 line check-ins. Hey, saw this, thought of you type things.
Yeah.
He's very, keeps a loose, broad network.
I'll give you a big difference.
Yeah.
I consider him a peer.
Mm-hmm.
I've met him in person. I already like him. Mm-hmm. So when he hits me up, even if I'm like, oh, like
I'm on the list.
I'm on the list. I actually am happy to be on that list.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that to follow his strategy with a stranger who's probably, not a peer.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for reach out. It works for potentially continuing.
Staying in touch with acquaintances. It's a great strategy. Peers that already like you, I think that totally actually does work. I think that's a great idea. But yeah, I just got that email and I laughed. I loved it.
Cold email. Yeah.
I'll do this before we get to questions. If you do want to know how to start a business, or you have a business and it's not going well, instead of going with those shitty gurus that are going to have you emailing Ben and Chris, check out evanpagantraining.com/charisma for marketing step-by-step. It's a sponsor for our podcast, and it is, in my opinion, one of the absolute greatest resources for entrepreneurs and business owners that exists, and shaped Charisma on Command in very meaningful ways, and is a huge part of why we're successful. So,
not about networking, just FYI. It's about marketing.
No, it's about marketing. But that's what I'm saying. If you want to start a business, or if you want to grow your business, instead of going to these crappy gurus, go to evanpagantraining.com/charisma. I didn't know I was going to do that segue, but it seems right. It fits.
What we said in the past, and I'll say again, is it is the foundational thing that I tell anyone to start with, potentially after the 4-hour work week, which kind of like creates the dream of like, oh, why would you want your business? You can travel, you can do these kinds of cool things. Okay, what do you need to do now? Check out Marketing Step by Step.
Yeah, anyone who says, I want to start a business, or I have a business and it's not making as much as I want, or I'm not sure how to get clients, or whatever, anything along those lines, it's I think the best resource.
Best starter, for sure.
How to make your business succeed and grow.
Cool. Do we have questions?
Yep. All right. So the first one is in response to last week when Charlie talked about having a bad therapist. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Yeah. So they just said it would be interesting to hear Charlie speak on what made that therapist bad, because it's not a topic that I believe gets discussed often.
Oh, well, this one's easy.
Yeah.
This was a person who did not have strong command of the English language. I mean, it was bad. Like, didn't understand what I was saying. At a base level, seemed incredibly rushed for time, like didn't feel engaged with the conversation, and okay, gotta go, like that type of thing, like that, which you don't want to do in therapy. Sometimes you want to be like, hey, just so you know, like, we're coming down to 5 minutes, like so you can wind things down, because part of what you're trying to signal in therapy is that I value what you have to say, and it was just not at all that. And then some of the advice I can't remember because now it's been such a long time. I thought, and some people can disagree with their therapist, but I've had experience with therapy and with Charisma on Command and with stuff, and I was like, this is just dead wrong. It was like, well, you probably shouldn't tell them that because it's going to upset them. I was just like, this is just bad advice.
Yeah.
Like, this is so that for me, it was remarkably bad, that particular one. So and then in the follow up, they had like a reach out, like, hey, would you like to do another? Like, this person contacted me, over weeks and months later, like when they clearly needed some dinero.
Yeah.
It was really poor, and that was one of the unfortunate things. I had a good therapist. This was via BetterHelp, on BetterHelp. The first one that I had, I was like, this guy's good. Not world class. I feel like I found truly fucking incredible therapists, and they're super duper expensive in LA. But the first guy was good. And this person was so bad that we stopped working with BetterHelp after that. So it was a bummer. Bummer to have that. And also a bummer that there was no system by which I could be like, get rid of this person.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to do?
I don't know what to say. I feel bad, but yeah, I mean, we talked after that. We asked the BetterHelp people if they could create some sort of rating system for their therapists so that you would know who's good and who's bad. But they said that that's either very frowned upon by the therapists, or it creates a bad dynamic,
and
or something.
And you don't want the ease that Yelp has with a therapist, because the other thing is, like, a good therapist can get a bad review from a bad unvetted client. But I think that's part of the difficulty with setting up these marketplaces, which is I know there's a screen on the therapist, but in my opinion, it's like, did you pass these credentials? Not, are you good? And there's no screen on the incoming, which is like, are you a good candidate for therapy? Like, and so in that kind of a market system, ratings are necessary, but it can also are easily corruptible. So I understand it, but I think it's a fundamental problem with it. But at the same time, I could see the use of something like BetterHelp, because it does give cheap access to therapy. Like, the therapists that I'm talking about that I think are world class, they know it, and they're damn expensive, man.
Also, you live in LA. So if you live in the middle of nowhere, you might literally live in a town that doesn't have therapists. So,
and in which case, and this is the thing I wouldn't advise against BetterHelp, what I've told anybody who's ever asked is, like, try it. We were lucky enough, I don't know if it still exists, you could probably find it. I think it's betterhelp.com/charisma. We set up, I don't know if it still exists with them, a free trial. I don't know if it still works, but like, your first one was free, I think, because that was like, hey, we don't know how to do this in a way where we can recommend this but not cost people money. So give it a look. It might still be out there. I don't know.
I don't know. That link might be dead. I mean, we had a not unpleasant separating, but we had a separating where we just said we can't promote this unless we can get ratings or guarantees or whatever. And then they said they can't do that for us because it's not their business model. And so it just didn't work. But yeah, I actually do understand why BetterHelp would be helpful for someone who lives in a town that doesn't have therapists, with parents who aren't at all understanding, think that any sort of getting in touch with your emotions is weakness or woo woo or whatever it might be.
Could be great, man.
So yeah, if you're just in some random town,
I think it's worth a try.
Help,
if you,
I think it could make sense.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth a try. And I've have recommended it to many people that are in different circumstances than my own.
All right, last one I have is I was raised by a very religious family and was a devout Christian myself until 2 years ago when I left the religion.
Wow.
I left for many reasons, the biggest being that I was simply unconvinced by the available evidence that Christianity is a correct view of the world, and I have had a few discussions with my parents recently about my current views, and thankfully they've not been angry with me, although I can sense a little disappointment. With the holiday season approaching, I was curious how you think I should handle the events surrounding going to a Christmas church service with them. For context, my dad works in this church, and both my parents are very involved in the community there, and I'm sure are going to want to introduce me to everyone when I visit for the holidays. I know that despite them being aware of my deconversion, they still want me to go for the sake of tradition. Part of me thinks I should just suck it up and go just to make them happy and not cause a scene, but another part of me hates organized religion and never wants to set foot in a church service ever again. I carry a lot of religious trauma, and I'm very aware of the psychological games churches play to get individuals to conform to a belief system, and this is something that I never want to be associated with, even if it is for one Christmas service. However, with all my immediate and extended family being religious, I know that I will stick out for not going to this, and it will likely lead to uncomfortable conversations during the holidays, which I would prefer not to have in that setting. I would love to hear what you guys would do in the situation, and if you have any additional advice.
Well, I've never been in that situation. So at first, and I'm glad you said it, I was gonna be like, just go, suck it up. But I think you raise a really good point, which is like my experience with this is traumatic. And I don't want to go back to the scene of the crime. I don't want to go have to deal with that. I'm hardly against, a hard no for this. Thinking through it, I will just pose a question, which is, what if you said, Mom, Dad, I love you, and you said this, like, in my life, you guys have been great. I feel like I have a lot of issues from Christianity. Like and you guys can maybe discuss that, but like going there brings up, and I hesitate to use the word, you could like trauma for me. And if you want, you can discuss that with them. And I don't know how open they'll be. They've heard you somewhat. And then at family dinners, I definitely tend towards this. It's a problem. I would just be like, yeah, why didn't you come? Be like, well, actually, the church really wasn't very good for me growing up. Like it taught me this and that wasn't good. It taught me like I don't get as uncomfortable with those.
Dude, when you became an atheist, you brought your religious aunt, or your aunt who was religious brought you out to lunch, and you made her cry or you made her shake. You made her
tremble, and we walked out.
You questioned the faith
in
front of her because you were so excited.
I was thrilled
to have the discussion. So you're in a very different boat.
I'm a weird.
You love to talk to theists.
I thrive in debate and conflict and differences of opinion. So what do you think?
I don't think there's a wrong answer. Personally, I don't think that going to sit in a church means that you're endorsing the institution. I go to weddings. I'll go to a bat mitzvah. It doesn't mean that I endorse the synagogue. Maybe I'm wrong on that, and I should take a stand to never enter a religious institution, but I'm agnostic. I don't think Christianity or Judaism got it nailed in their book. But yeah, I'll show up for a wedding. I'll show up for a funeral. I will be in those buildings without having any moral challenge about it. Mm-hmm. So personally, I don't think it's an endorsement of the institution to go into the building.
I think that's a fair stance.
That said, I don't feel traumatized by it. Mm-hmm. So if going to those ceremonies was deeply emotionally painful for me, I don't know that I would do it. I just go and tune out. They're boring. My experience being inside of religious buildings for my adult life is just that they're boring. So I allow myself to be bored so that I can be present for a wedding or a bat mitzvah, whatever it might be. So that's my personal take. But yeah, I definitely also wouldn't do it if it was going to be miserable for me, if it was going to be reliving painful events. I just say, yeah, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go be miserable. And you guys should just respect that about me.
Yeah.
And we can hang out before, we can hang out after, just not in that building.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I don't know where you're at in your experience with the trauma that you called it, but it's like, if you're not triggered, it actually isn't like you go and you see all the ways that they try to hook people in, and it is cute and mildly triggering. It's like, oh, how goofy that is, as opposed to deeply upsetting when you're more traumatized by it.
But on the hardcore flip side, you were altar boy who got molested, and going to the church causes you PTSD. I tell my parents, no shot in hell I'm going in there.
Yeah.
So
you'll have to figure out
where you
where you are in terms of being able to.
Yeah, do you oppose the institutions, or is it PTSD traumatic? It creates pain in you. Mm-hmm. I can't tell from the question where you are.
Cool. We go to Patreon.
Yep.
What do we have today?
Today we're gonna talk about opening up to your parents over the holidays.
A lot of holidays.
Yeah. Talking about dropping a friend that behaves unethically, and we're gonna talk about
League of Legends mid and the new meta in season 12.
Is there a new meta? What's the new meta?
We didn't talk about Arcane, which I'll just say I have enjoyed so far. And
Arcane's been great.
Yeah, and it made me. I'm gonna be writing some stories. I'm working on them.
What's the new meta?
I don't know. Vagar Jungle.
And then the last thing is telling people you're fantastic when you're not.
Okay. Cool. So that's what we got on Patreon. If you guys want to hop in, we'll be discussing that and a bunch of other
questions. That's a Charisma
questions.
University question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys want to check that out, it's over on Patreon. Keeps us going. Keeps food in Justin's belly and a warm roof over his head. So we hope that you decide to do it. Support the podcast. Either way, we appreciate you. Take care.